Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fantasy Six-Pack NFL Preview Podcast Series. I'm your host, as always, Travis. It's a big day. We're on the NFC. We made it through the AFC. I'm glad you guys have stuck with us this far. But before we get into the teams, welcome my co-host, as always, Noah. Noah, what's going on?
I'm ready to talk about the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, it should be interesting talking about some NFC teams. I am a Giants fan, so I know this division well. Should be interesting. I'll try to keep it mostly positive. I won't let my biases get in the way. But before we do any of that, it's time for plugs. You can find me at TheRealTravioli on Twitter. Noah, hit yours.
You can find me at Noah Spurlock NFL. That's Noah Spurlock NFL.
Yep. So please go follow us. Go hit us with questions. Go give us suggestions, whatever you need. We are on Twitter to answer your stuff. Also, go follow or subscribe, I should say, to our YouTube channel, Fantasy Six Pack. That's where you can find all of our episodes, all our new stuff, all our old stuff. And as we get closer to the season, we'll keep rolling out stuff. So just subscribe. You don't want to miss any of it. You don't want to go looking for it. This way, it'll come right to your inbox. You'll never miss a thing. Yeah, I think that's all the plugs I got. So on to the Dallas Cowboys. Again, I'm going to stay positive. Are a pretty good football team. Got some good players on them. I think that's about all I'll say. They do have a quarterback by the name of Dak Prescott, who put up some pretty solid numbers last year. 3,885 yards, 22 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He did add 6 rushing touchdowns, so that's very nice. Noah put up a bunch of yards, didn't have the most touchdowns. What are we doing with Dak Prescott? What do we think of him?
I think heading into this season, he's kind of established at least his fantasy role, which is just a backup quarterback, because I don't think he's going to wow you because the offense is focused on Zeke. He's kind of their number one priority. So Prescott isn't really going to have like an insanely good season, but at the same time, I think we've seen a couple seasons where he's a solid choice, and that combined with his ground game makes him pretty trustworthy. So I like targeting Prescott as backup.
Yeah, those 6 touchdowns definitely help. And only 8 interceptions. He does seem like the type of quarterback who won't kill you, but only 22 touchdowns. I say this a lot, but in the current NFL, people are just throwing the ball all over the place. So from a starting quarterback for your fantasy team, I think you'd like a little more than 22 touchdowns. So I can understand why you sort of classify him as a backup. But yeah, I agree. He's pretty solid. The rush touchdowns help, but he doesn't wow me. And probably the reason for those lack of numbers and production, as you mentioned, the star of the offense, Ezekiel Elliott, had another superstar year. 304 carries, 1,434 yards. Only 6 rushing touchdowns, a little low, but he did put up 77 receptions for 567 yards and 3 touchdowns. And those 77 receptions were a huge jump from his previous career high of 32. So he really got involved in the passing game, and if that continues, that's only good things can come from that. So yeah, Noah, how good is Zeke? Is he a number one? Are you taking him number 1? You taking him number 2? What's his ceiling? I guess I'm trying to say.
I mean, I think his ceiling's the best back in the league. And on the field, I think we know, kind of similar to Prescott, I think we know exactly what we're going to get from Zeke. He's going to carry the ball a lot of times. He's going to be pretty good on the ground, score a lot of touchdowns. And every year he's been getting better as a receiving back. So I'm really excited to see that too. The only issue with him right now is that there's some stuff going on with an incident in Las Vegas. People are pressing charges, but since most of you, I'm assuming, will be listening to this in early July, I doubt too many of you will be drafting yet. So just keep an eye on that, make sure that's all cleared up. But assuming he's not suspended at all, I would be okay taking Zeke as my number 1 pick.
Yeah, it definitely does seem like Zeke is sort of a rarity when you're looking for an elite fantasy player, in that has pretty bankable stats. Like every year he's played like 15 or 16 games. He's put up some great numbers. I know he did have 2017 there was the weird on-again, off-again suspension, so I'm going to throw those numbers out. But he's a very reliable back who I love to hate in real life, but I would love to have on my team for fantasy. And those 77 receptions, that was a huge jump and something I did not expect, but I'm very happy to see it. So I agree. I think he's definitely in the conversation for number one. Would you take him number one, or is there somebody else that you don't have to say who it is, but do you have somebody else ranked ahead of him on your big board?
Yeah, I got another guy that I've got my eye on if I have the number one overall pick.
Okay, see, that's what we call a tease in the industry. Keep listening to the podcast and you'll find out. Yeah, I think we've said all we have to about Zeke. He's pretty great, and if you end up with him on your team, you're going to have a lot of fun. Okay, on to the pass catchers. It's a pretty interesting group of receivers, and a group that has some, pretty big name recognition. Amari Cooper, who they picked up from the Raiders last year, put up 75 receptions, just over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. But I should mention 725 of those yards and 6 touchdowns came after he got traded to Dallas. So he really put up like the most of his numbers in the 9 games with the Cowboys. So I know those numbers on face value seem a little low, but the Raiders situation last year wasn't great for him, let's just say. They also have Michael Gallup in the mix. He had 33 catches for 507 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. And they brought in Randall Cobb, a former Packers star receiver. He only had 38 catches last year for 383 yards and 3 touchdowns. So we've got a lot of potential. We've got a lot of name recognition, but not the most production out of these guys. So Noah, what are your thoughts on the Cowboys receiving core?
As for Amari Cooper, I think he's a pretty good pick. Right now, he's kind of going in the back of the 3rd round, and considering the talent he has and kind of the lack of competition that he has behind him, I think targets will certainly not be an issue for him coming into this season. And I think he's pretty fast, and I mean, he's a very athletic receiver, so I think he also has that big play potential where he can really blow up for a huge game and kind of win you your fantasy week, even if he might have an inconsistent week or two. And as for Gallup and Cobb, I think that one of them will probably end up being like a top 35, top 40 receiver. So they would be fine additions for your bench, but I'm not really looking to start one of them.
Yeah, looking at both Gallup and Cobb, they're sort of my, weakness, let's say, where I love taking the sort of post-hype receiver who's been in the league for a year or two, who's looking to make a jump that didn't produce right away. And also the veteran that changes scenery, I like those guys too. But I agree. I don't think both of them are going to be huge players this year, which is very confusing to me when I'm thinking of who I'm going to try to pick of these two. But I do think they both have a good opportunity. Who breaks out, I do not know. But as for Amari Cooper, yeah, I like what you said. And he came into that system in Dallas and really acquainted himself pretty quickly. So, I mean, another offseason can only do him good. Do we see him being, if all goes according to plan and he puts up, replicates his production from last year with Dallas over a 16-game schedule, you think he could be a top 10 receiver, or is it just a notch below that?
I think he 100% has the potential to be a top 10 receiver. I don't have the numbers pulled up on this, but I can only imagine. I'm assuming if he did keep his 16-game pace from last year, he would have been a really good receiver. I mean, I don't know. I think he'll be a top 10 receiver, honestly, because he has another year in that system, another year to gain chemistry with Prescott. I really like him this year.
Yeah, so I just pulled up, I did the math. But yeah, it would have come out to, if he kept his Dallas numbers across a 16-game season, he would have had almost 1,300 receiving yards and 10.6 touchdowns. So let's round up and say 11 if all goes great. So those are pretty good numbers. I know, like, projecting out off of half a season of production is kind of wonky, but, it's a good indicator of what he could do. So, yeah, Amari Cooper, definitely a good pick. On to tight end, which is a pretty interesting situation for the Dallas Cowboys. They brought back Jason Witten, who last year was the Monday Night Football announcer for ESPN, my former coworker. But back in 2017, when he was still playing football, he put up 63 catches, 560 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He was one of the most consistent tight ends before he retired, but I mean, he has been away from the league for a year. So, Noah, how are you approaching Jason Witten this season?
Well, I mean, even though he was awful on Monday Night Football, he might be even worse in the NFL this year.
Wow.
As if he wasn't unathletic enough and slow already, a year off is not going to do him any favors.
So even with the sort of lack of top end, or maybe not top end, but sort of reliable, bankable tight end stats, you wouldn't take Jason Witten's going to be a Hall of Famer. You wouldn't take a Hall of Famer on your team this year?
No.
Okay, well, that's fair. I don't think I would either. I think a year away from the NFL, especially when you have to deal with blocking and getting hit over the middle and fighting off linebackers, I think those skills atrophy a little bit when you take a year off, but I'm sure somebody will pick him, just from name recognition alone, and he's been remarkably consistent and productive throughout his whole career, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was a solid tight end, but I don't think I'm willing to take that risk, and it doesn't seem like you are either. Okay, well, that wraps up the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of name recognition, a lot of potential, but time for the question we end on every week, Noah, or every episode, I should say. A Dallas Cowboy must be on your team this season. Which player are you picking?
I know I said that I really like Amari Cooper, but it is just impossible to turn away from Zeke in a question like this. I think he's one of the safest players this year because we're going up on 3 years of just every game. He is really good. This will be his 4th year in the league.
Yeah, I mean, every year he's passed, 2 years he's passed 1,000 yards. He barely missed it that 1 year when he had the whole suspension drama. Dallas still has one of the best offensive lines, and they like that grounded pound system. So, yes, I think you're accurate when you say he's one of the most consistent players, and I can't knock you for picking him, Even though, like I said, I'm a Giants fan, I would happily take Zeke Elliott on any and every one of my fantasy teams. Okay, that wraps up Dallas, the first of our NFC teams. Woo, we're off to a good start. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll find all our backlog episodes. Like I said, we're on to the NFC. Maybe you're just coming in now. You missed the whole AFC, so go listen to our backlog of episodes. Hit us up, leave comments. Find us on Twitter because we're happy to interact with you guys and we want some feedback. So let us know what we're doing. We could even start a whole new section on this pod for the NFC teams. But we're not going to start it unless you let us know. Anyway, that's all I have. I'm Travis. He's Noah. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.
See ya.